Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VC TV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott, and today we're going to be speaking about decentralized finance and everything fintech. Fintech that was, fintech that is, and fintech that's to be here in the near future. And again, that highlights decentralized finance, also known as DeFi, for today's conversation. A lot to talk about, but as I do on these particular episodes here at VCTV. I've got a list of headlines I want to run down just so you get a little bit of context of what's happening in this industry as it continues to shift and shape every second versus every day of the week. And a lot has continued to happen. To kick us off with, according to DeFi Pulse, we have now reached over 28 billion, that's billion with a capital B, in total lock value, or TLV. For context, less than a year ago, last May, we reached over $1 billion, just crossed that line. Here we are in February of 2021. Again, less than a year later, we've already crossed over $28 billion in total lock value in decentralized finance projects. Also, BlockFi has registered a Bitcoin trust with the SEC. Big news. Also to follow, Grayscale is looking to launch trusts for a few new digital currencies as well, 5 to be specific. Ray Dalio recently came out and shared his perspective and positive thinking on Bitcoin and digital currencies as a whole. If you haven't had a chance to read it, we'll drop the notes from him and his team in the show notes afterwards, because not only do we get Ray's opinion, but we also get his entire team's analysis as to what it will take for digital currencies to enter into our daily lives on a more consistent basis. We also had Visa, who came out and noticed or discussed adding cryptocurrencies, or again, digital currencies, to its payment networks. We've seen this with a number of partners and also a number of credit card or debit card partners coming onto their networks, but Visa themselves is now stepping up to the plate and saying, we're going to be a part of this world, and not just our partners as well. MicroStrategy today purchases over $10 million worth of Bitcoin, another big push in their aggressive strategy to add more to their balance sheet, with other enterprises and others following suit. We also have Gemini launching new earn programs, interest earning programs that will help those that are storing currency with them and some of their platforms yield. We also have Kraken announcing that they'll be running their own Chainlink node to provide pricing data to decentralized finance, or DeFi, apps. We also have a ton of activity in the enterprise sector, which we'll talk a little bit more about as well. But with that being said, I want to jump into today's discussion. But first, a big thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in. If you're liking what you hear today, make sure you click subscribe, share the episode, and also make sure to check out the archive on LATOKEN.com to hear more about what's happening in the world of fintech and decentralized finance, along with from all of our speakers in the entire VCTV family, as we bring together the best and the brightest from the investing space to share with you their thoughts and insights and on-the-ground perspective around different technologies, industries, and regions around the world. And if you'd like to be on a show like today, either as an investor, giving your perspective, or as an entrepreneur to share your company product or service with us, do reach out to the team and or myself, and we'll find that right spot for you. Speaking of the team, a big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making VCTV possible every single day, as without the team, we couldn't make this all happen as we do all around the world, every day, all day for you, our audience. With that, I'm your host, Kyle. Let's go ahead and jump in and introduce today's investors who will be sharing, again, their perspective and thoughts around decentralized finance and fintech as well. Brett, welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you. A quick introduction and a little background. Well, we'll come back to Brett here in just a moment. Irfan, also welcome back to the show. A little intro and a little background.
Thank you, Kyle, and thanks to LATOKEN team and the audience for tuning in. My name is Irfan. I'm the managing director of Irfan Holdings. Again, excited to be back and talking about the topic that's near and dear to me, and looking forward to an exciting panel. And also just a quick update along with what Kyle mentioned. This week was also eventful. The fact that Elon Musk came out publicly in Clubhouse and mentioned that how he sees, how positively he sees the impact of Bitcoin, and he does see Bitcoin being adopted in a more traditional and an institutional manner. So I just wanted to add to that. Back to you, Kyle.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Irfan. And on that, also referred to the store of value generation, wrote a really good in-depth article on what that means to him and what he sees from his perspective, also around NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and again, the store of value generation and how that generation is pushing things forward and will inevitably disrupt what we look at and how we look at things from a digital perspective, a digital goods perspective as well. We also had Mark Cuban come out on Reddit, I believe this morning or late last night, doing an AMA and Ask Me Anything session to share a little bit more about his holdings and what he's looking at from the digital currency side as well. So thank you, Irfan, for mentioning that. So yeah, we had Mark Cuban. We also had Elon Musk talk a little bit about digital currencies earlier, just a few days ago, and Ray Dalio. So a lot of influential individuals showing their support for the digital currency space. That being said, Adrian, welcome back to the show as well. A little intro and a little background for everybody.
Thank you, Kyle, for having me here again. And thank you to LATOKEN and to the audience for tuning in. I'm Adrian Niculescu, serial entrepreneur and investor. My genius zones are marketing, sales, and business development, and I love keeping my hands dirty in those areas. Besides my advisory roles and board memberships, I'm actively involved in CloudCoin Consortium. CloudCoin is a post-blockchain digital currency, Faster Capital, a Dubai-based accelerator incubator for startups, Sara Global Ventures, a UK-based venture capital company, and also I'm a mentor in Virgin Startups, Richard Branson's program in UK. Happy to be here and to contribute. Exciting topics today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adrian. This is, I know, a spot that you focus on a ton, so getting ready to dive in. And David, welcome to the show as well. I'm excited to have you here with Maria and I on VCTV and a part of the VCTV family. A little intro and a little background for everybody.
Absolutely, Kyle. Good afternoon to you. So my name is David Tawil. I'm here in the capacity as president and co-founder of ProChain Capital. ProChain Capital is a crypto-focused hedge fund. It's multi-strategy. So not only do we hold, buy, and sell tokens of many kinds, but we also, using my investment management experience, go ahead and invest both long and short in equities and debt of publicly listed companies that are focused on payments, amongst other things, and other digital offerings. And finally, our portfolio also consists of some VC offerings. So I thank you very much for being able to be here and certainly excited for the discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. This is going to be very exciting. So Irfan, David, Adrian, and I think Brett will join us back here in just a little bit. Want to dive right in and just kind of hear from you what's happening in the decentralized finance space and fintech as things have continued to ship and shape. Again, as I mentioned, some of those headlines over really the past 60 days and in some cases the past 2 weeks. We've had a lot more individuals come out and show, again, their support for digital currencies and what's happening in the world as we start to shift towards a more digital or digitized financial infrastructure more than we've had. Would love to hear your thoughts as to where we're going and kind of where we're going next in the next year. And maybe Irfan, you want to kick us off?
Great. No, thank you, Kyle. Thanks for giving me the torch. An exciting 2 weeks, actually, in a month specifically for blockchain, but 2 weeks also specifically around finance, investments, etc., across the world. Of course, I don't want to take a deep dive into the controversy that was surrounding it. But what was very interesting during this time is that as you hear a lot of the conversation that's been spoken about, you see people, consumer, as well as potential innovators are so much more well informed, specifically when it comes to areas of how some of the sectors that we are talking about, which are direct applications of both blockchain and decentralized finance, which is fintech, going to the unbanked in both emerging markets as well as developed markets. Areas where we haven't touched some of those options that are available. So these are, I believe, are the most positive signs that I'm looking at, apart from some of the heavy lifting done by some of the big names in the industry or the traditional industry. I mean, adoption was meant to happen, but I think what I see is the organic development of the knowledge and understanding what could be done and what are some of the possibilities gives me a lot of hope. Now that said, of course, personally, as I mentioned, I have always been majorly focused in the area of cross-border payments, and I'm seeing interesting new projects in this specific area as better understanding, as innovators are having better understanding. However, there's also been a little bit of a I would say, backstep in certain developing countries where I have been looking into the cross-border payment area, and mainly, India, where the Indian government has recently banned, privately issued tokens and cryptocurrency, which I see as a short-term setback. However, the fact that the opportunity, the fact that the traditional industries, as well as a lot of the government who are seeing the potential of utilizing crypto-based payment railways, could be a lot of positive impact in the developing economy. Back to you, Kai.
Yeah, thank you, Irfan. Actually, I want to go one level deeper on that. So you mentioned India, and we did have a headline and a little bit of news around India, as you said, taking that back seat, or really taking a step back around digital currencies. And we've seen a few other emerging, really changing markets, transformative markets, I believe, as you put it, that have done the same thing. Why, with such a country like India, looking at technology as a huge initiative for their future, why do you think they're looking at digital currencies as something to kind of pause on and maybe reban, as they have a few times now as well? I mean, maybe not just India, but in general, some of the other markets around the world. Why do you think they're kind of taking a pause to understand what's going on there?
That's a great question, and thanks, Kyle. And as I mentioned, I've been looking into this sector since almost 2011. In fact, since 2011, some of the earliest applications utilizing both crypto and blockchain were around cross-border payment. However, we haven't found out a single winner in that particular area because of the complexity of the nature of, trying to execute cross-border payments. So I think onto that question, I think it's far bigger than just the application of the technology and what the technology offers, right? Because when we are talking about cross-border, we also have to understand the geopolitics of the particular country, etc. So I think one of the major aspects, like if we are giving an example of such countries, especially transformative economies, which have the potential to make a huge difference utilizing this technology, is around their restrictive monetary policy. Now, one has to understand why the restrictive monetary policies are there in the first place. And the thing is that the restrictive monetary policies are in the first place because a lot of the locals have lost trust in the governance within those countries, which basically tells that these locals are looking to park their money elsewhere apart from in their country. Now, this has been a major problem for such economies, and I think this is not going to go away anytime soon. But at the same time, I think because it's a complex battle between certain conservatives within the government, but also the innovators. I mean, innovation has happened. People have brought about a lot of use cases specifically because money is still going out of the country through unofficial means. And what people see is that utilizing the technology and having framework allows you to have certain structure that enables you to benefit rather than lose. But again, this is a complex topic. I'm sure it's beyond the realm of the event today. But I can definitely speak with somebody whoever who wants to discuss this in greater details, as I've been working in this area for a while.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you, Irfan. Really appreciate it. David, I want to switch over to you, and any comments to add to Irfan's points there as well, but then just your general view of what's happening in the DeFi space. As you run this, digital currency or crypto hedge fund right now, so you're seeing probably a lot of activity, and would love to get your perspective. But first, any comments onto Irfan's points, and then we'll love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, sure. No, I'd like to go ahead and speak to all of it, under one set of comments, which is as follows. Look, as a hedge fund, we invest in securities, tokens, assets that we think are going to go ahead and appreciate in value. The topic of this conversation is DeFi. We see DeFi as being very different than store of value. We think that Bitcoin is way out ahead when it comes to store of value. We think that it will continue to, hang on to that spot for a considerable period of time. We're always cautious and on our toes about something going ahead and overtaking Bitcoin. But frankly, for the long portion of our portfolio, Bitcoin is really where we're placing a lot of emphasis. Now let's turn to DeFi, which is very different, which is a transactional, much more complex, much more, I would say, functional, as opposed to store of value, aspect of the blockchain. And there, I'd like to go ahead and split the world into two, to go back to Irfan's points. We look at the developed world in one way and the emerging markets world in another way. In the developed world, we have financial institutions that are massive, massively embedded, and massively capitalized in this country. Certainly, we've seen a few upstarts such as PayPal and Square over the last number of years. But at the end of the day, it's a huge amount of territory in developed markets that is going to be, gone to war over between these massive financial institutions. Is there room for an upstart? Yes. However, is the likelihood that an upstart is going to be acquired and then grown by a much larger financial institution? I think so. And so therefore, when it comes to DeFi in the United States, we're actually looking much more towards existing financial institutions making smart choices about who to acquire or who to partner with. In the emerging world, however, where there isn't as much, embeddedness of financial institutions, there is potentially lack of access to financial institutions by large swaths of the population because of their economic status. We see their upstarts being much more likely to go ahead and just capture enormous amounts of market share based on adoption. And so there we're watching a much more kind of, I'd say, grassroots type of, movement in order to go ahead and pick the right horses or the best investments in those areas. And then when it comes to the tokens themselves, frankly, like Ethereum, which is predicated on a bunch of DeFi, we are also, very concerned about the mob being able to move prices fairly quickly. We've seen a lot of activity, over the past couple of weeks, and certainly, I think everybody at this point, even the average person in the street, knows about GameStop and AMC and Robinhood and so forth. And the ability of that type of investor momentum to go ahead and push the price of, what I'd say are not necessarily winners in the token market, is something that, I think we need and we are vigilant about at ProChain.
It's a good point. I like the comment around grassroots in those transformative and emerging markets around the world. Would love to maybe again go one level deeper in that, and anything in particular you're seeing around the type of companies that maybe be created around decentralized finance, whether that be in the enterprise, whether that be to personalized individuals. Is it payment transfers? What have you seen kind of start to develop, David, in your research and in your activities, starting to develop and really get traction in those transformative markets?
So to us, I'm not going to call out any names in particular. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
But in certain markets where there is real concern about devaluation of currency and just volatility of currency, and also at the same time, to Irfan's point, about transferring money cross-border, which is really important when you've got a lot of migrants, moving around for various reasons, political, military, economic reasons, and otherwise. just the ease of access and the ease of transfer and the user friendliness of those applications to us is really the most important thing. Frankly, the big name on it, or branding or financial backing and so forth, to us is not as important as the actual user experience in those situations. And so that's where we're really maintaining our focus in those countries. And like I said, in the countries that desperately need it most, which is, areas where people do not want to hold their local currency, or they can't afford to hold their local currency. They need to transfer it elsewhere in the world for other members of family, acquaintances, businesses, whatever, that need it more.
It's a good point. Thank you very much, David. Appreciate it. And Adrian, I want to come to you next on this. Any comments further on David's points there, or Irfan's before that? And then again, would love to get your general view of what's happening from your world around DeFi and fintech as a whole. Oh, Adrian, you with us there? We may have lost Adrian for just a moment, but with that being said, Irfan, let me come back to you. I mean, where do you see the areas of opportunity? If those are looking to start building or investing, what do you see kind of an opening as in the decentralized finance space? I mentioned a little bit that there's a lot of activity in the enterprise space, which I personally see a lot of opportunity in as well. But anything on your side that you're seeing that's really getting you excited right now in the decentralized finance space?
Thanks, Kyle. I will reiterate what David just mentioned. There's plenty of opportunity in the developed market, specifically in the B2B sector. Personally, I'm looking into some projects which are around the payment systems in the enterprise side, specifically on the supply chain side, which is very interesting, and it's definitely a very interesting use case. On a separate note, again, I'm going to go back to the potential of decentralized finance being deployed in transformative economies are massive, right? I mean, we've always mentioned that the traditional infrastructure is not there specifically to serve the underserved, the unbanked, and also essentially the instruments are not there. Decentralized finance, provides those opportunity in those areas. Separately, what I see that essentially that in the coming days, some of the potential, especially all these capital that's been locked in DeFi, I see a lot of positive sign in this area because of the amount of capital that's been locked. But apart from that, some of the projects that are coming out in the DeFi space. I mean, 2021 has been rightfully termed as the year of DeFi. And I am going to see after the heat of the market, slows down, and we're going to start seeing some really strong activity in the later phases of the year. Back to you, Kyle.
Thank you, Irfan. And real quick, I want to ask a follow-up on that. Energy and space. So we talk a lot, you and I here on VCTV, around energy, the alternative energy space in general, and then also space as an industry. Does decentralized finance and a little bit of fintech play a big role in how those industries are going to shape up over the next 5 to 10 years? I know there's a little bit of efforts being worked on around the energy space right now. And again, just a lot of it around kind of track and trace, or the monitoring of where energy is and isn't going. And then in the space industry, we've talked with Megan Crawford from Space Fund, which you are also a part of, on how that may play a role in the space industry as a whole, as we look to bring a currency of some sort into our orbital lives. But in general, would love to hear your thoughts as to where those two industries have some room to grow around bringing decentralized finance and fintech into their worlds.
Right. No, thanks, Kyle. And again, so finance is the I would say foundation for almost all industry, right? So it's not just the space and the energy industry that it has application. It has application in almost every area. So, but specifically around the energy side, and I'm sure you know this, but for those of you who don't know, before the whole market started exploding, Chainlink made a major announcement where they were partnering with Energy Web Token. So, and which is a very positive step, specifically because in Chainlink being an Oracle, has the opportunity to work specifically with companies which are trying to tokenize, energy distribution is a strong area. But at the same time, I think we have had this energy discussion in LA token for several times, where what we're seeing is that apart from the science and technology behind producing alternative energy resource for us, it's of utmost importance for us to how we would be able to manage our existing energy and how we can optimize that and how we can monetize that, how we can incentivize that. And I see that decentralized finance could play potentially a large role in this area, specifically to both encourage consumers, but also empower consumers. Similarly, in the space industry, and it's the commercial space industry is today in its very early stage. Sometimes I always say this, for each industry, their stages, the timeline is a little bit different, right? So software industries, innovation could happen if that happens in a span of 10 years, it would take exactly almost 30 years for that same amount or same factor of innovation to happen in the healthcare industry or the space industry. And the reason being is that because of the tight regulations around these industries, it takes a little bit of time, but it doesn't mean that applications are not being used. But also at the same time, within this industry, it's far more important to have a robust technology which has lower chances of failure than deploying a test technology for some time, because you don't have that kind of room for error within these industries. But again, within the space industry, we've been trying to see how decentralized finance, tokenizing assets could play a part, just so that to make it more accessible to the greater public, as well as other industry players who could be interested to come into this rapidly growing industry of space. Back to you, Kai.
Thank you, Irfan. David, I want to come over to you real quick around the hedge fund space. This, I think, is a very interesting area that doesn't get talked too much about. And, starting a hedge fund with digital currencies is a huge feat, and congratulations to you and your team for doing so. But you play a little bit of the spread, and, no pun intended there, and also get into VC investments, so direct startups investments as well. What has been your experience around decentralized finance or the world of decentralization over the past few years as you started the hedge fund and then started getting into VC? What have you seen really transform? And again, what has you getting excited for the industry as a whole, beyond DeFi, looking at decentralization over the next couple years, as we're having this Web3 moment, as more applications are becoming distributed? We're also starting to see, again, a lot of what we've been talking about here in the finance space start to take shape.
Okay, Kyle. So that is really a lot to chew on. Not because you used a lot of words, because the confluence or the intersection of all of these kind of previously independent activities and strategies is really a massive transformation. It's not to say it's happening overnight, and to say the transformation is going to be a landscape that changes so much that people are not going to be able to digest it. I think actually the underbelly is what's changing massively. I think the top level, frankly, what the consumer sees or what the investor sees, what the allocator sees, is not really that different. And that's what makes it beautiful. And that's what makes it, I'd say, easy, elegant, and the ability to make a lot of money out of it, because it doesn't mean that you need to change people's attitudes all that much. So let me go ahead and unpack that slightly. So look, I come from the asset management world. So starting a hedge fund in the crypto space was natural from the asset management perspective. It was not natural for me from the technology and I'd say that the building blocks of blockchain perspective. And I needed a partner for that, and I thankfully have an incredibly talented and valuable partner that I work with when it comes to the technical aspects of the investment portfolio. But to go ahead and kind of flesh out the idea of DeFi taking over in ways the investment world in terms of making things a lot easier, taking out a bunch of transactional costs or steps, administrative risks, and so forth. I think it's great. I think it's a long time coming, and it's really ironic, that the industry, I would say, that powers all other industry, i.e. finance, really has, not changed much in terms of digitization as much as other industries have. And the reason for that is, frankly, the power of the lobbyists, i.e., the investment bankers, the people that get paid, lots of money, traders, salespeople, research analysts, so on and so forth. That lobby is quite powerful. They don't want to give up their paychecks to technology. And so therefore, it's really, the shareholders of those financial institutions that are driving the change, because shareholders are saying, hey, if we can cut a lot of costs out of the business, i.e. fire lots of really, well-paid people, there'd be a lot more profitability left over for shareholders. And so CEOs and boards of financial institutions need to reckon with that, which is not a bad argument. It's an argument that, frankly, those bankers make every day about companies that they focus on. So it's been a long time coming. It's a hard argument to go ahead and win, but I think we're at the point where it's going to be won. And frankly, except for those financial institutions, users, consumers, clients of those financial institutions will not be any wiser about the changes that have been made.
It's a good point, and thank you, David. I think Adrian's back with us, so I want to circle back to Adrian. And Adrian, a question for you is what you see happening throughout the decentralized finance space right now, from your view, as you've been investing, you've been building, you've been playing really all sides of the table in both decentralized finance and previously in fintech as well. What have you seen kind of transform, and what's getting you excited for the year ahead as you join us?
First, I wanted to continue what said first David regarding the increased activity in the markets during the last 2-3 weeks. And in trading and in investing, there is a basic rule. Of course, there are many basic rules, but one of them is when a subject is all over the news, it's usually too late to enter. And it's a big period with adoption, either for new people buying stocks or new people buying cryptos, or people taking different positions, but without doing the proper research. And one example, last week when Elon Musk added Bitcoin in the bio section of his Twitter account, and Bitcoin spiked with about $6,000 on one of the biggest exchanges. Both short and long positions were liquidated, even the long positions due to high volatility, and so many people were burned. And one thing which gets me not necessarily excited, gets me worried, is about the amount of people who are burned. And what happened during the last week, I saw last week, the pump and dump groups on Telegram, now they somehow changed their names to Wall Street Bets. And I'm as a retail trader, I'm a long guy, not short. And I was looking at what happened with Ripple on Monday, when it was scheduled pump at a certain time, and it was built momentum with price until that time, and when it was the moment announced, actually it was a big dump. And what happens in these situations is that the people who are initiating those moves, they are making most of the money, because when everybody is buying, they are selling. This is not good for the market, unfortunately, because it will decrease the kind of trust we should have in the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And with the DeFi, there is one thing, of course, I'm really excited about what happens in DeFi, and 2021 will be a major year of growth, but somehow I want to be sure that the projects will be still there in 6 months' time, and will not see like a website disappearing tomorrow with everything around it, including, I don't know, funds and other things. And I like to see more stability in this space, because I believe and we'll have a ton of projects around somehow swap, this swap, or you know, and this excites me a lot, but also I have a lot of worries around that.
So Adrian, let me ask you something real quick. You mentioned 2021, so this year being a big year for DeFi. Why? What in particular, maybe one or two things, has you very excited in saying that statement so boldly? I mean, we saw a ton of growth, as I mentioned, went from 1 billion in May of TLV, total lock value, according to DeFi Pulse, to now $28 billion here in less than a year later in these projects. And we're continuing to see all these efforts. But what for you has you getting so excited and putting that statement out there?
The digital currency opportunity made possible a certain transfer of value. And this transfer of value is, let's say, between 0.1 and 10. And now we are, I believe, between 5 and 6, something like that. It's huge adoption, and it is considered that the social media space, let's not talk only about Reddit, can become or became like the biggest hedge fund. So the decentralization of the opportunity in the financial space made possible for the little people to have more or less the same resources as the most savvy people in this space. And it was a development in this direction. And we are at the point when this thing, from this type of growth, will be like that. So this is what I'm saying.
That's a good point. Thank you, Adrian. Irfan, I want to come to you next again. So 2021 being the year following on Adrian's point, Irfan, what again, one big prediction you have for this year, any closing thoughts that you have, and then also where you can be found online as we come to wrap this very exciting discussion around DeFi and the future of it this year.
Great, that's fantastic. Again, you can reach me through Twitter or LinkedIn, Twitter at Semper Irfan, LinkedIn as Sheikh Mohammed Irfan. But that said, I see 2021 being an exciting time for seeing some of the pilot use cases of DeFi. In particular, what I would see, I'll be very excited to see application in transformative economies, as I mentioned. What DeFi essentially provides, and what we have always been thinking around the application on blockchain, is the data points, etc., which allows you to build systems and framework that one would expect or is existing in the developed market, can be utilized in the transformative market. Just as an example, a lot of the transformative market today doesn't have credit rating systems, etc., which means that a huge number of people are still not able to get financial liquidity and even businesses. So what DeFi application has the opportunity to touch these very specific areas. But at the same time, what also excites me about DeFi is the control of information from the consumers, and the consumers can also look into areas where they could also monetize some of their information and be able to apply to applications that will be very specific to them, which they would be able to utilize for their purposes. So I see some of these pilot use cases happening by the end of the year. I mean, they have already started rolling those projects out, but we're going to hear a lot more around some of the results around these pilot projects. But back to you, Kyle, and a very exciting conversation. And thank you to the audience and also the panelists for creating such an exciting discussion.
Thank you, Irfan. David, coming back to you, same question. Bold prediction for the year 2021 as we look towards the DeFi and fintech sectors, and then also where can you be found online? And any additional closing thoughts you may have about today's topic?
Yeah, I just want to go back to a point that was made a little earlier regarding kind of technical activities and technical kind of monitoring, of asset prices. Now, my fund is very much fundamentally focused. My investors invest for the purposes of our thought, research and process, and conviction. So in contrast to, trading that, comes about because of momentum or some other, movements related to chatter, the mob, programs, computers, whatever it may be, that's really not our focus. And that's why, frankly, our hedge fund is a multi-strategy fund focused on not only tokens, but also equities and debt, and also some private investments as well. So it's just a differentiator. It's not a good or bad type of point. It's just I don't think you can win necessarily playing both games. You're either a technical player or you're a fundamental player, and certainly both technical and fundamental folks win all the time. With respect to what I see the rest of the year for purposes of DeFi, in contrast to what I think is going to be a pretty boring year, let's say for store of value and Bitcoin, where the price will just continue to rise. Certainly there'll be volatility, but there may very well not be as much volatility as there is in the stock market, which was previously thought to be much more kind of safe investment, I guess, when you go ahead and look at it from a volatility perspective. I think in the DeFi space, there's going to be a lot of development. I think there's going to be a lot of changes. I think there's going to be a lot of new names thrown around. I think there's going to be a lot more investments by financial institutions who know that they have to go ahead and capitalize on this now, because they don't want to be out of the race. So no matter how much, they want to go ahead and play down their conviction around blockchain or tokens or currencies or whatever it may be, I think, there's going to be a lot of big names. The one thing that we haven't mentioned, which I think is also going to be important, is sovereigns getting into their own tokens. When a large government, a large respected government somewhere in the world decides to go ahead and go full on digital with respect to their currency, I think that's going to set off a bunch of shockwaves. A lot of people are going to ask the question, okay, so what does this now do? Who does this now disintermediate? Who does this now render their business plan either void or subject to a lot of revamping? And I think that's going to start to, occur. I don't expect there to be a full-fledged, turn to digitization of a major currency around the world, within the year, but certainly moves towards that are coming. And I think people need to think about that, as things develop, over the course of time. And in terms of finding me online, it's pretty easy. I am David at ProChainCap.com. That's David at ProChainCap.com.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, David. Really appreciate that, along with you as well, Irfan. And Adrian, close us out. Where are any closing thoughts that you have to add on? And then, of course, where can you be found online to continue the conversation?
What I like very much as a big difference between the normal banking and the DeFi is that, let's say, when you want to take a loan from a bank, they will look at you usually if you are, I don't know, white, black, Romanian, American, British, and so on. With DeFi, if you want to make a loan, if you have a collateral, you just need to push some buttons. Doesn't matter if you are, let's say, white, yellow, black, British, Romanian, American, just to have access to that platform. I can be found on LinkedIn. That one is my main communication hub. Adrian Niculescu. Happy to respond to all messages, to help in any way I can. And thank you very much for the opportunity to contribute to this amazing educational resource, LATOKEN VCTV. And congrats to the team for making this possible every day.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Thank you, David. And again, thank you, Irfan, as well. Really appreciate all three of you joining today to share your thoughts and insights on the continuing evolving industry of decentralized finance, or DeFi, and fintech as well. And to you, our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard, make sure you click subscribe, share, and check out the archive on LATOKEN.com to hear more from our speakers today and all of the speakers in the VCTV family. As again, we bring the best and the brightest from around the world as investors to share their thoughts and insights and on-the-ground perspective around different technologies, industries, and regions around the world. If you would like to be on a show like today as an investor or as an entrepreneur to share your company, product, or service with us to get real-time feedback and exposure to our entire VCTV community, do reach out to the team and or myself, and we'll find the right spot for you. And as Adrian said, a big thank you and a huge appreciation to the LATOKEN team and to Maria, who make VCTV possible every single day, bringing us all together to make sure that we are educating you, our audience, on the latest and greatest in different technologies and industries and regions around the world, as we couldn't do it without them. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott, and you can find me everywhere online at Kyle Ellicott, along with all of our speakers today on all social media. And remember, when you do reach out, please add context, where you heard us, where you saw us, and what you would like to continue the conversation about. That being said, we'll be taking a short little break here, and we'll be back in just a few moments with more VCTV talking about blockchain in emerging or transformative markets around the world. Thanks, everybody.